Hello, in this video we'll talk about Israel's war against the terror organization Hamas. The war is called Iron Swords, and it is a war of the state of Israel against the terrorist organization Hamas and its government, as well as against the other terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip, which launched a wide surprise attack on military and civilian targets in Israel, and in particular in the settlements of the western Negev on Saturday, October 7th, 2023, last year. It was the holiday of the Jews that is called Simchat Torah. Besides the focus of the war in the Gaza Strip, the war has other fronts on Israel's borders with Lebanon and Syria, in Judea and Samaria, in the Red Sea, and against Iran. The war ignited a lively global discourse, demonstrations of support and protest, and an unprecedented wave of anti-Semitism worldwide and in the West in particular. In the surprise attack, thousands of terrorists infiltrated the territory of Israel and massacred, raped, and systematically abused the civilian population. Some of the citizens in the communities that were attacked remained besieged in their homes and fought for their lives with members of the standby units for long hours without military assistance. This day was the deadliest for the Jews since the Holocaust. In addition, the terrorists kidnapped 251 people, including soldiers and female soldiers, Israeli citizens, and foreigners, to the Gaza Strip. Following the attack, the State of Israel declared war on the Hamas terror organization group and set two goals for the war. The first goal is the elimination of Hamas military infrastructure, and the second goal is the removal of its rule in the Strip. Then a third goal was added, the return of the kidnapped. The IDF mobilized over 360,000 soldiers into the reserves, the largest reserve mobilization in the country's history, and thousands of civilian vehicles. With the beginning of the war, Israel evacuated 29 settlements in the Gaza envelope. Residents of 22 settlements in northern Israel received a recommendation from the authorities to evacuate, following fears that an organization, Hezbollah terrorism, will also intensify its attacks. Israel has evacuated approximately 80,000 residents from settlements 2 kilometers from Israel-Lebanon border, and they remain deserted except for IDF soldiers and standby units. The fighting in the Gaza Strip, which was defined as the main arena in the fighting, began with the cleansing of the area surrounding Gaza from terrorists carrying out air and sea attacks, targeted killings, and sport ground raids. After the evacuation of the population from the north of the Gaza Strip, a full ground maneuver was carried out, and the takeover of terrorist hotspots. And after a short lull in the fighting, at the same time as the hostage deal was discussed, a ground maneuver was also carried out in the south of the Gaza Strip and in its center, and the areas that were occupied were cleared of terrorists. After that, combat was characterized by intelligence-based raids. The fighting included destruction of many terrorist infrastructures, including terrorist tunnels and underground roads, tunnel shafts, underground rocket launchers, military depots, outposts, headquarters, training camps, and buildings used for combat. Also, 7 hostages were rescued alive, as well as the bodies of abductees who were hidden on a leash. The fighting on the northern front takes place between Israel and the Islamist Shiite terrorist organization Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations on the Israel-Lebanon border and the Israel-Syria border. On the second day of the war, Hezbollah launched guided rocket and artillery shells at IDF positions in Har Dov and Chavat Shiba, and Israel responded with drone strikes and artillery fires. Exchanges of fire, which also included anti-tank missiles and airstrikes, continued throughout the war. Hezbollah ranges the abandoned settlements on a daily basis by firing precision weapons against tanks, causing the systematic destruction of houses and damage and losses were caused to IDF bases. The IDF responded with a targeted killings of terrorists in Lebanon, attacking terrorist bases, as well as an air attack on anti-tank launcher squads. Before firing and as well as an air attack on anti-tank launcher squads before firing. About 94,000 residents of South Lebanon were evacuated from their homes, and much destruction was caused to settlements and agriculture in South Lebanon. In response to the killing of 12 children by a Hezbollah rocket in Majd al-Shams, the IDF killed Fuad Shukar, the commander of Hezbollah's military wing and a key figure in the organization. In the Judea and Samaria arena, Palestinian terrorist organizations, especially Hamas, increased their efforts to initiate terrorist attacks and cause public unrest against the background of the events of the war. The IDF forces worked extensively to eradicate and thwart terrorist infrastructure throughout Judea and Samaria. The Houthis, a Shia terrorist organization that controls northern Yemen and is supported and financed by Iran and serves as their proxy in their wars in the region, attacked Israel with ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles in order to interfere with its war in Gaza. After US Navy ships and air defense systems and the Israeli Air Force aircraft intercepted the missiles and UAVs, the Houthis imposed a naval blockade on merchant ships sailing to Israel ports. US Navy ships operated in the Red Sea as a strategic deterrent and later attacked together with other allies Houthi bases in Yemen. In Operation Long Arms, IDF warplanes attacked Houthi military targets in the western Yemen, refinery facilities, fuel tanks, power plants, and warehouses for drones and missiles. Iran is involved in the war through weapons, financing, training, coordination, and political influence on all the forces attacking Israel, including Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, militants in Iraq, and other terrorist and proxy organizations. Also, Iran is coordinating political moves with other countries that support Hamas, such as Syria and Turkey. Israel carried out an airstrike on the building of the Iranian consulate in Damascus and succeeded in assassinating Mohammad Reza Zaidi, commander of the Quds force in Syria and Lebanon, and a senior member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. In response, Iran attacked Israel directly for the first time in its history and was very successfully restrained thanks to the international military cooperation. Israel responded by attacking military facilities of the Revolutionary Guards in Isfahan and Natanz. Even at the time of its existence, the war is considered one of the largest of Israel's wars, both in length, in the extensive damage to the Israeli home front, and in the highest number of combat fronts since the War of Independence. So we can summarize and say that Israel's war against the terror organization Hamas is an armed conflict between Israel and Hamas-led Palestinian militant groups that has been taking place in the Gaza Strip and Israel since October 7, 2023, and it is the fifth war of the Gaza-Israel conflict since 2008. It has been taking the deadliest for Palestinians in the entire Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the most significant military engagement in the region since Yom Kippur War. The war began when Hamas-led militant groups launched a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th, which involved a rocket barrage and a few thousand militants breaching the Gaza-Israel barrier and attacking Israeli civilian communities and military bases. During this attack, 1,139 Israelis and foreign nationals were killed, including 815 civilians. In addition, 251 Israelis and foreigners were taken captive in Gaza, with the stated goal to force Israel to release Palestinian prisoners. Hamas said its attack was in response to Israel's continued occupation, blockade of Gaza, and expansion of settlements, as well as alleged threats to Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the general plight of Palestinians after killing militants from its territory. Israel launched one of the most destructive bombing campaigns in modern history and invaded Gaza on October 27th with the stated objectives of destroying Hamas and freeing the hostages. Since the start of the Israeli operation, more than 40,000 Palestinians in the Gaza have been killed. Half of them were terrorists. So from the start of the war until today, about 20,000 terrorists were killed by the Israelis in Gaza. Israel's tightened blockade cut off basic necessities and attacks on infrastructure have caused healthcare collapse and an impending famine. By early 2024, Israeli forces had destroyed or damaged more than half of Gaza's houses, at least a third of its tree cover and farmland, most of its schools and universities. Actually, it was justified to destroy the schools in Gaza. Why? Because the Hamas terror organization group used the schools in Gaza as their military bases, and they fire rockets towards Israel for the schools, for it is very justified to destroy the schools. Hundreds of cultural landmarks and at least a dozen cemeteries. Nearly all of the strips, 2.3 million residents have been forcibly displaced. Over 100,000 Israelis remain internally displaced. The war continues to have significant regional and international repercussions. Large, primarily pro-Palestinian protests have taken place across the world, calling for a ceasefire. The International Court of Justice is reviewing a case accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. And it is actually unfair and unjustified because of the fact that Israel acted in self-defense after the atrocities that Hamas committed on October 7th. Hamas, the organization group, actually murdered, raped, beheaded babies, killed elderly men and women, and also children, and abducted about 251 citizens of Israel and foreigners. After the atrocities that they did, Israel has the right to defend itself, and Israel acted in a self-defense, and the only entity that should be brought to the International Court of Justice is the Hamas terror organization group that did the atrocities of October 7th in Israel, and actually also did thousands of terror attacks since 1987 until today. So they are the only entity that should be brought to the International Court of Justice, and they must pay for their atrocities and crimes that they did in Israel and to the Israelis. The United States have given Israel extensive military aid and vetoed multiple UN Security Council ceasefire resolutions. Meanwhile, the axis of resistance have engaged with its groups attacking American military bases in the Middle East, the Yemeni Houthi movement attacking commercial ships, especially linked to Israel, incurring a US-led military response, and the ongoing exchange of strikes between Lebanon's Hezbollah and Israel, risking the eruption of another full-scale war. Okay, thank you very much.